Hey, this is Alfred's Basic Adult Piano Course, Lesson Book, Level 1. This video is Lesson 8, page 13 in our book. Page 13 is two songs, Rock Along and Mexican Hat Dance. Starting at the top with Rock Along. In our previous lesson, we talked about a couple of things, the grand staff and time signature. So if you look right away at this piece, notice that it's all written on the grand staff. The treble clef and the bass clef are combined as one. The top line is going to be played just by the right hand. It's only treble clef. The left hand is going to be played only on the second line in the bass clef. The other thing is the time signature. Notice at the beginning, after our clef signs, we see 4/4. So that tells us that every measure is going to add up to 4 counts. And if you want to double check, look at the first measure, a half note followed by 2 quarter notes. So that's 2 beats plus 1 plus 1. That's 4. If you look at the very last measure, a whole note, that's 4 counts, 4 beats. The bottom 4 in our time signature means the quarter note gets 1 beat. That's information that has not changed and will not change for quite some time. If you look really closely at the treble clef and the bass clef, they're exactly the same. Exactly the same. The only difference is your right hand treble clef is playing on this C. Your left hand bass clef is going to start on this C. But the rhythms are exactly the same. The notes are exactly the same. The only difference is the 2 octaves that they're playing in. So let me just play you the piece first, and you can hear how the right hand and the left hand are really a copy of each other. So did you hear how both lines of music were exactly the same? The right hand just sounded a little bit higher than the left hand. When you get to the end of the piece, notice the dots. So the repeat sign means we're going to play this piece through a second time. Now, before you start playing this piece, the first thing I recommend doing is just getting familiar with the notes, playing through the notes. If your rhythm isn't exactly precise the first time or a couple times through, that's okay. Get familiar with the notes. And with notes is fingering. Let's look at the right hand first by itself. So notice that we start on middle C. Notice they give you the thumb. You play C again. Now this is a little different. We have something called a skip, C to E. Okay, on beat 3 and 4 in that first measure. We're used to just kind of playing the next note up on the keyboard, as well as, the next finger on our hand. But we have a little skip there, so that can be a little tricky. Now, when you go into the second measure, you're up on a G, which is our 5th finger, and they reminded us of that. But the previous note you played was an E with your 3rd finger. So again, another skip from E to G. So our second measure, you're on that G half note. You're going to come back down to E. Notice no 3rd finger there. But we know that it's our 3rd finger from our assigned fingering. The hand isn't going to move off these 5 notes. So after that E, you're back up at G again. And then after G, going into the 3rd measure, you're going to go way down to middle C. Now we know middle C is the thumb. And we do it again. And those are both half notes. We do it one more time. And that's our whole note. So we've gone through and played the notes with the fingering. Now we want to do the same thing, go nice and slow and add our count. And remember, when we count, we're going to count every measure up to a total of 4. And we're going to make sure our counting is very steady. So to do all this, we probably need to go slow. So let me demonstrate for you. You can even give yourself a count off if you want, such as this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you feel pretty good about that, and if you feel like you got everything at that tempo, you can start going a little bit faster. The piece is called Rock Along, so it's probably not a ballad. It's probably going to go pretty fast. So take it up in smaller increments. So next I might go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, etc., etc. And eventually maybe work your way up to about 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the left hand, like I said, is the exact same thing as the right hand. So since you already know the tune from playing it in the right hand, the left hand might come a little bit easier. But you still probably want to review it nice and slow. Remember, the fingering is always a little bit different for the right hand. Instead of your thumb on C, it's 5 on C. So let's go through very slowly, playing the notes and counting aloud. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so once you feel good at that slow tempo, make it a little bit faster and faster and faster. Just remember, don't get too fast too soon. If you find that that steady beat is falling apart, you probably need to back up again and make sure that you can play it slow and even. So once you feel good about the right hand and the left hand, put it all together. And remember, you're going to play it through twice because of the repeat sign. So let me play it for you one more time. I won't count out loud, and I will take the repeat sign. So just a final few words about this piece. When I went from my right hand at the end of the second line to my left hand, my right hand at the end of the first line to my left hand at the beginning of the second line, there was no pause, no hesitation. I kept those steady 4 beats of that whole note in the right hand going, and then boom, I was right there, beat 1 in my left hand. Same thing for the repeat. At the end of the second line, I did my 4 counts for that C in the left hand, and then boom, right there, beat 1 at the very beginning again in my right hand. One tip that might help with this piece, now that you've seen it, now that you've maybe played it through a few times, notice there's no D and there's no F. The whole piece is only constructed of 3 notes, C's, E's, and G's. So if there are no D's and no F's, that means no second finger and no fourth finger in this piece. So this entire piece is just thumb, third finger, and fifth finger in both of your hands. So that little bit of process of elimination, I'll call it, might help learn it even quicker. So once you've completed Rock Along, we'll move on down to Mexican Hat Dance. And notice there's something new in this piece that we're going to learn. This squiggly sign in the bass clef. If you look at measure 1 on beat 4, this sign is a quarter rest. So just like a quarter note, it lasts for 1 count. But you're going to rest for 1 count. And a rest in music is silence. So on beat 4 in that measure, it's going to be silent. And you notice nothing's playing in the right hand because we have the whole rest. The whole rest we learned in the previous lesson means that the entire measure is silent, in this case for the treble clef, the right hand. Now there are other quarter rests in this piece. Do you see them? Go to measure 2, beat 4. We have a quarter rest. Go to the last measure on the line again in the bass clef, beat 4. We have a quarter rest. Now on the second line, treble clef, first measure, beat 4, quarter rest. Again in measure 2 on beat 4. And that's it for the quarter rest. So one thing that might help simplify things is the quarter rest in this piece is only on beat 4. Only in those particular measures. Now remember in Rock Along, we compared the first line to the second line, found out that what the right hand is playing, the left hand is duplicating. Now in this piece, Mexican Hat Dance, the bass clef, the left hand plays first. But if you look at the treble clef in the second line, the right hand, and compare the measures, compare measure 1 of the bass clef to measure 1 of the treble clef. They're the exact same thing, notes and rhythm. Compare measure 2 of the bass clef and measure 2 of the treble clef. Same thing. Even measure 3 on both lines are the exact same thing. The only difference is measure 4. And measure 4 is a little different because it's the end of the piece. So it just has a nice long whole note, which kind of signals that the piece has come to an end. Notice at the end of the piece, there's the repeat sign. So you're going to go back to the beginning and play it through a second time. Now, like I said with Rock Along, you want to focus on notes first and fingering. Notes and fingering usually work together. So at the very beginning, our C position with our left hand, because bass clef plays first. So we got a G with our thumb. We're going to skip down to E with the third finger. Now we have our rest. We're not focusing too much on rhythm yet, but be aware of the rest. Second measure is the same thing as the first measure, the G, followed by the E. Now the third measure, go down one note, one finger to fourth finger on D. We have D, E, F, skip down to the D, and then up one note to the E on the final measure, and then down to C. So it's a little tricky. There's some skipping around and things like that. Let me play it for you again. So you got G to E, again, G to E, and then D, E, F, D, E, C. So measure 3 and measure 4 I find to be a little more tricky. So you might have to work on those two measures just by themselves. When you feel pretty good about the notes and the fingering, we're going to go through now and add the counting. So there's 4 counts or 4 beats per measure. We're going to go nice and slow. And don't forget the quarter rests on beat 4. So we can do a little count off even to give us a head start. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if at any point that felt like that was too fast, go even slower. If you feel like you got the first 2 measures down at that tempo, but the last 2 measures aren't quite up to par, practice only those last 2 measures. Focus on the problem spots. All right, when you feel pretty good about that, then you can go back and start trying to make it a little bit faster, a little bit faster. And in the end, I'm thinking this is probably the tempo that this piece can go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the right hand, the treble clef on the second line. Remember we said it's almost identical to what you just played in the left hand. So let's look at it. Notes and fingering first. We got G to E. Again, G to E. Down to D, E, F, down to D, and down to C. And that's the difference right there between the treble clef line and the bass clef line. So now let's go through slowly and add the count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And just like the left hand, once you feel good about the right hand at that tempo, get it faster and faster until it's moving at a pretty good speed. All right, so let me play for you the entire piece with the repeat straight through. And that's it for Mexican Hat Dance. So the new thing you've learned in this piece is the quarter rest. The quarter rest looks like just a squiggly line and it gets 1 count. So that's it for page 13 in this lesson. Rock along, Mexican Hat Dance. When you feel pretty good about those 2 pieces, you've got them at a good tempo. And of course, nice steady rhythms and counts. Go ahead and proceed to the next lesson.